It's a cold edition. I got a blanket on my legs. I know my wonderful guest today also has a blanket on her legs. She says it's not because she's cold. I don't believe her. More for grounding. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So yes, I have a guest, Louise Miller. Welcome. Thank you for being my guest today. It's a delight to have you here.
Thank you, Tom. It's a pleasure to be here. Always lovely to chat.
Yes, it is. Now, you and I have known each other for an amount of time, but for people who maybe haven't met you or don't know as much about you as they should, give us a very brief intro to you and what you do.
Okay, thanks, Tom. So I am Louise Miller. I am the genie for your genius. I am a productivity mentor and founder of Make It Happen Club. And basically, what I do is help solo business owners who've got too many ideas and not enough time. I help them to stop faffing, stay focused, get the important things done so they can actually see progress in their business. And I do that through Make It Happen Club, through In It Together, which is my one-to-one mentoring program for people who are a bit more established in their business. And I also have my own podcast called Unfrazzle, which shares bite-sized insights to help you stop faffing. So yeah, that's the whistle-stop version.
That is very whistly. I love it. I love it. You've been doing it for a while.
7 years.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Cast your mind back, if you could, very briefly. What was the tipping point into this amazing journey of support and coaching and mentoring? What got you there?
Yeah, and I love that you just use the phrase tipping point, almost as if you know that a lot of people who end up in this space have had something happen that got them here. So for me, it was, I mean, I spent 15 years after uni. I got my degree in reading and colouring in, and then I spent 15 years in various different environments, higher education, the charitable sector, financial services, all over the place, doing lots of admin-y, management-y, team leader-y kind of things, never quite knowing what I wanted to do when I grew up, never feeling like what I was doing was quite right. And I was always, the problem I had was that I was always very good at what I did, very well liked, very well respected. So it wasn't as if people were not appreciating me and I was feeling kind of underappreciated or anything like that. It was just, this does not feel like a good fit for me. And eventually, when I was in higher education working as a team leader, it was completely the wrong role. I should not have been managing a team of 5 people because my natural instincts to take care of people, whilst that is a great thing in a manager, it can also not be so great. And that was the case for me because I didn't really have the skills. It was one of those situations where I was great at what I did, was put into a leadership position and then given no support in how to actually do that effectively. And the outcome basically was me wanting to take care of my team to the extent that I was taking a lot of stuff onto myself, and feeling the weight of responsibility and all of that kind of stuff, whilst being the go-to person for everybody because I was good at what I did and I always had the answer to things. And eventually that all just led to burnout. GP diagnosed me with work-related stress and anxiety, which was actually the best thing that could have happened because it meant that I had to stop. So I was rushing around like a goodness knows what for years. But that diagnosis made me stop and stay at home and go, okay, now what am I going to do? And I knew I didn't want to perpetuate that cycle of running around like a loon, doing a really good job, being promoted into roles that actually I didn't really want to be doing. So that was the point where I thought, right, I'm going to see what I can do on my own, find my own way. And yeah, so I signed up for a few kind of courses in, I don't know whether you're familiar with Free Range Humans. Marianne Cantwell has got a book called How to Be a Free Range Human or Be a Free Range Human or something. And I did a couple of courses with her around finding what it is that makes you tick, finding where your skills are and where your strengths are and how you can shape all of that into a business. And that was kind of my way in, really. And I mean, that in itself was an interesting thing because this will be interesting to you, given the work that you do. I always had this voice in the back of my head telling me I needed to be doing something creative. Because as a child, I was drawing constantly. I was very musical. All of that kind of artistic, creative stuff was a big part of my life and a big part up until uni. You know, art was part of my degree. And I was convinced that's what I should be doing. And the more I was delving into the stuff that comes naturally and easily to me, the less that was feeling true. And I tried to paint. I worked part-time for a while and I tried to sell paintings, and that was never going to work. And eventually I had to accept that, yes, I have got a creative streak, but actually that is not the thing that comes easily and naturally to me. And I need to accept that what does come easily and naturally to me is very valuable and is something that people need. And it was only when I was sitting in London with a gin and tonic, meeting other people that were on this course while I was still signed off sick, felt a bit guilty about having gone down to London to have a gin and tonic with the people doing the course with me when I was signed off sick. But hey, you do what you've got to do. And these were all really, really creative ideas people, really zingy, sparky people. And I was sitting there thinking, I want to be like you. And they were sitting there looking at me and going, well, I wish I could do what you do. And that was the massive penny drop moment for me, was that those ideas people, those creative people I wanted to be like, actually needed my natural skills. For me, it's about being organised, being efficient, getting things done with as little fuss as possible, simplifying things, all the logic, the detail, all of that stuff, which sounds so dull. It did to me at the time. I was looking at all that. This is all coming out of personality profiling, all of that stuff. And I was looking at it and going, how on earth am I going to build a fun business out of that? But when I was sitting in that bar in London, I was like, it's because I'm going to be working with people like you. I will be doing what comes naturally and easily to me with people like you who are fun and zingy and bring the passion. And that has turned out to be true. So that's a very long answer to your question, but hopefully helpful, interesting.
There's a lot to pick up on there. Not least of all the thread about fun business. I think I'm just going to put a pin in that one for a second, because you mentioned something, obviously, it's never good when you get to a point where you need to be signed off work. Yeah. It's not good. That is the point at which it's gone wrong for me.
100%. Yeah.
Like, the systems aren't in place to protect people when they get to that point. And it's almost like the only option is then to be signed out of work. But you mentioned, like, you could have come back almost and continued with the promotions and the upskilling and the path that comes with what you know. What sort of was the I mean, you alluded to it there, you know, that you had something deeper down, that it wasn't your journey, but how did you almost have that conversation with yourself that the traditional path absolutely was no longer going to work?
That's such a great question, and it's an interesting one. And I think the honest answer probably is that it was over a long period of time. You know, I was stuck in this cycle pretty much from the minute I graduated of going, I don't know what I want to do, and falling into things, getting comfortable, getting promoted and going, this is not what I want to do, and running away and starting again. And the amount of times I went from a really good salary to taking a massive jump back to go and start again somewhere else, and exactly the same pattern would repeat. And I think at least 3 or 4 times that pattern would repeat, and it was the repetition of that and me going, I'm not getting any closer to figuring out what I want to do. So I don't know that there was a specific conversation that I was having with myself as much as a realization that I can't carry on just repeating this pattern because it's making me miserable. And there's got to be something else. And I think the fortunate thing was that I was surrounded by is a bit strong. I had a person in my life who was also on the path to try and work out what she wanted to do. And together we were reading books and, you know, making ourselves aware of the fact that there was a different world out there, which I think a lot of people don't realise. They think it's a job or it's nothing. But something that Marianne says in the Free Range with Humans world is around people feel like they're secure in a job. But actually when you've got a job, you've got one client. And if that client decides they don't want you anymore, you're out on your ear. Whereas in a self-employed world, you've not got all your eggs in one basket. So this, I think that helped me, because I always thought of myself as a naturally risk-averse person, and that I need safety and security, and I think that is still true. But I don't think the only way to get that is through employment. So it was kind of realizing all of these things at once and knowing that there were other options out there, and thankfully having an incredible husband who signed me up for one of the courses I'd been procrastinating about joining, because I just couldn't function when I was signed off. My brain wouldn't. I just couldn't. And I got back from work one day, and Tom just said, "I've just signed you up for this because I think you need it." And that was, again, a gift. So yeah, it wasn't one specific thing. It was just an amalgam of lots of different realizations, I think.
Yeah, but an awareness.
Yeah.
Over the course of that, I keep saying journey. It is. It's while that narrative almost was being written, you spot the cycles and you went, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It is hard. And it continues to be hard. You know, it's never, I don't think it ever gets to a point where suddenly you think it's all nailed and it's easy. But it's massively more fulfilling and rewarding and satisfying. This thing that I've somehow built from nowhere. And this, I've managed to survive on my own wits for the last 7 years.
Yes.
You know? And I think that's an incredible achievement. And I might not be raking in the millions of pounds, but I don't care. I really don't. I'm doing something I love to do with people I love to hang out with, getting to meet people like you, work with clients doing incredible things. And I wouldn't change it. I love it.
I think more people need to hear that. Like, that you don't need to be raking in X figure months and what have yous. Because if anyone's listened to this before, they'll know I'm pretty cynical about that stuff. If anyone's had a one-to-one with me, they'll know I'm pretty cynical about that stuff. Because as you say, it's not what success hinges upon. Let's talk about risk for a second, because that was a really interesting thought. And I think when people say to me, I might not be quite ready to go freelance or be self-employed yet, and I ask them why, and they say, it's a bit risky, isn't it? I might not be able to do X, Y, and Z, or I might not find A, B, C, or what if I don't thing. My answer is always, so what? What if you don't? You don't know until you do. So, as somebody who has been here in this self-employed world for 7+ years, how do you handle the idea of risk when it comes to maybe trying new stuff in your business? Because obviously you've got stuff that works. You're here, you're doing it, you've found threads to pull that work. So I guess it's a twofold question then. How do you consider risk when it comes to trying new things? And maybe, like, how does that idea of risk keep you here doing what you do?
I'm going to answer the first part, and you might have to ask me the second part again, because I'll probably have forgotten it by the time I get to that. But it's, for me, because I still consider myself to be a bit risk averse. You know, I'm not a throw caution to the wind kind of person. And I think it's important that we do find our own sense of safety and security, because otherwise we can paralyze ourselves with fear. And I was very fortunate when I first quit my job, because they asked to keep me on as a consultant for a bit. So I did have a bit of money coming in from that while I was building the other thing, which was helpful. But actually, I ended up earning money quite quickly. But in terms of now and the various pivots and adjustments I've made, because I have changed all kinds of things since over the last 7 years, things are very different to how they were when I first started. And for me, I just always see it as a gradual transition. I don't ever just go, I'm throwing the whole of this out and starting something new. It's more, iterative than that. It's, for me, I started out as a VA. I knew I didn't want to do that forever. So whilst I was doing the VA work, I was creating and building other things alongside it and going, right, I'm going to create these courses and just test the water with them and see what happens. So I wasn't, cutting off one revenue stream to create a new one. It was very much building. And then once I could see that thing was working, I was ready to let the other thing go. And for me, and I don't know whether it's partly because I am so naturally organized that I'm able to do that, because I can manage my time well enough that I can manage both of those things simultaneously. But that's how it's kind of worked for me. And, I held on to my last VA client like it was a security blanket, that I was like, oh, this is scary to let go of this, because I didn't know whether or not I would get the stream of clients that I wanted for the stuff that I'm doing now. But you also need to know at some point, you have to let go in order to create space for the new stuff to come in. So for me, it was about, I was letting go of people gradually, but I still had this one client I was holding on to. And eventually I was like, okay, I'm ready now to let go. I feel safe and secure enough. I'm still not entirely sure how this is all going to pan out, but I trust myself and I trust the thing I've created. I know that what I'm doing is blooming brilliant and people love it. So I'm going to let go of that and create space for more of this good stuff to come through. And it doesn't always happen quickly, and it's scary. And there are moments sometimes when you think, what on earth have I done? But, I also consider myself fortunate with the skill set that I have, that and I haven't needed to, actually that's a lie, I have needed to, but if things went completely wonky, I know I could find work. I don't ever feel like I would be unable to earn money, because I know that I can. And I did need to do that year before last. I ended up going back and just doing a project for my old boss, because I wasn't necessarily looking for something, but I could see that he was on LinkedIn posting that he was looking for some flexible project support. I was at a point in my business where I was going, ugh, I really could do with a bit more money coming in. And I thought, well, that's another opportunity for me to generate some income doing something I can do that's kind of fun. So I asked him if I would be a good fit. He said absolutely. So I did, a couple of days a week for a short while on that. And I didn't see that as a failure. I think a lot of people might have felt they needed to apologise for that or feel like they'd done something wrong. But for me, it was more about being very pragmatic around, what do I need to feel that sense of safety? There's an opportunity over there for me to boost my coffers a bit more again, so I can. And for me, it's about being able to invest in the support that I know I need to grow. And I got to a point where I couldn't. So I thought, right, this is going to build up my bank balance, so I can then go and invest that in getting some support to help me reach the next level. So yeah. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, it did. That was again, we're kicking over worm counts here. Who would ever dictate that something you do in your business is wrong? Because that's an interesting thing, and that has resonated with me. I have also, over the last 3-4 years, especially potentially coming out of the pandemic era, I have used my particular skill sets in ways to earn money. I'm kind of like Liam Neeson, that I have a very particular set of skills, but they can be deployed in various different ways, as with you, to make sure that you are able to survive in a way which is fun.
Yep.
But who would ever say that it's wrong to do? Go and find a bit of a job, or do something different for a bit.
Yeah, it's such a great question, and I think it comes from. Does it? Yeah, I think on a surface level, it's kind of coming from social media and the whole earn 6 figures before you've had your next cup of tea, all that kind of messaging. And I think people feel a lot of pressure around that if they are not doing that, then they're failing in some way. And there are people out there who will tell you that if you're not earning a certain level, or you're not able to support yourself just by working 2 hours a week, then there's something wrong with you, And I think a lot of us internalize that. So I think there is an external component of that, of us taking on all of that that's coming at us from, let's face it, social media. And I suppose there's probably also an internal feeling of, I said I was going to be able to do this myself, and being self-employed is the way forward, and I am somehow letting myself down if I'm going to go back to someone, to being employed in some way, which is nonsense. I certainly had a moment of feeling like that. It didn't last very long because I've done the work on myself to know that that is nonsense. But I think it would be very easy for people to give themselves a hard time for that completely unnecessarily. Because like you say, who is going to tell you that that's wrong? You can choose exactly how you want to earn your money. And if it's a hybrid between something that feels a little bit more secure because that's what you need right now, and being creative and doing your own thing and generating things off your own creations, great. If that's what you need to be doing, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
Do you think it's a labelling issue?
That's an interesting point. Yeah, maybe. Tell me more. What do you mean by that?
We describe ourselves as freelancers, consultants. At the end of the day, we're self-employed business owners. However you dress it up, that's what it is. And if you take a retainer client, technically, you got a job. If you work in 2 days a week under your business banner for the same client, you got a job.
Yeah.
But you're still self-employed. You have a client on retainer who wants to pay you money for the things that you do. So maybe is it that these social media filter bubbles, again, I can feel my high horse riding well into the field to play right now. I'm going to tether it up. Is it that we are burdened with the labels of others?
I think that is a very, very astute observation, Tom. Yeah, I think it probably is a lot to do with that. Yeah, absolutely. And I also think something I've had to separate in my own mind is this feeling that if we're seen to go and do like what I did a couple of years ago, go and get that kind of project work, it must mean that I am no good at what I do. And I've had to separate those two things out because I know I'm bloody brilliant at what I do. And, me needing to go and take a project for a bit of extra income so I can invest in myself doesn't mean that that's not true. And I think, I wonder whether that's got something to do with it, because we think the perception is going to be, they had to go and get I'm using air quotes, had to go and get a job. That must mean they're a bit rubbish. And that is not the case at all. But I wonder whether that's got something to do with it as well.
No. I don't like to make blanket statements or, very firm statements in this particular arena, because I think this is very much an open dialogue. But for me, especially me, the coach, as well as me, the business person, if you are finding ways to support yourself, you are actually better at what you do than somebody who is so dogmatic that they will not change track.
Yeah, absolutely.
You are better for it. Because I wonder, where you are today, the Louise the mentor, Louise the coach, the productivity powerhouse, how much of where you have been and the skills you have brought with you kind of are used today in what you do?
Oh, loads of them, particularly, and that's an interesting question actually, because when I first started after I'd left my job, I assumed that stepping into the world of self-employment would be a doddle, because I was so good at all the things that I'd been doing up to that point. And then I went, I don't know anything about running a small business. Oops. But I also know that I can learn really quickly. So my first clients, when I was working as a VA, I was honest with them and said, okay, I haven't used that system before, but I'll go and figure it out. And being able to figure stuff out is a skill I've used since forever. So that's definitely a big one. But certainly over the last 7 years, with all of the iterations that my business has been going through, the people I've been talking to and working with, I probably worked with maybe 40 or 50 clients when I was a VA, all of whom gave me the absolute privilege of seeing behind the scenes in their business. And I learned a lot from that. So there's all of the learnings that I've taken from all of these amazing people who've been part of my world. But also over time, it's been about being open to opportunities and exactly what you were just saying, not being closed off in terms of this is how I'm going to do it, but being open to other people's ideas and expanding myself in ways I didn't think would be possible. And that if you'd said to me 15 years ago, I would be talking to you now like this, I'd have laughed at you. You know, the very first time I was invited to speak, I said to the person who invited me, I was like, have you actually met me? What on earth are you thinking? But somebody else had trust and faith in me, and I trusted and had faith in them. So I think it's those kind of softer skills, if you like, around that trust and having your eyes open for opportunities and having your radar up for what you're hearing people say around you and incorporating all of that and all of the skills, the actual, I don't say actual skills, soft skills are actual skills, but you know, the being able to organise stuff and break big projects down into small steps, all of those things that have followed me around as well. I think it's an amalgamation of all of that that's got me to where I am now. Yeah.
Do you think that it matters how somebody would approach their business? Obviously, you have a very particular set of skills. You have an organisational mind. You and I are quite alike in that, like that we can systemize, we can process things, create processes of things and for things. But like, that's your business. This is my business. How maybe would you just like talk to one of your clients about the thing that they're doing in the language of their business and getting the most out of it?
So I always think the starting point, wherever you're at in your business journey, is understanding yourself and having a really strong awareness of what feels good to you, what doesn't, what your strengths are, how you like to work. And I think the stronger you are in that kind of awareness, the easier everything else becomes, because it's very easy to then see which opportunities, which things are for you and which things aren't, because you can put them through the filter of, yeah, I know I would find that fun, and oh my God, for me, that would be like pulling teeth. And it can be a fine balancing act between wanting to stay in your comfort zone and recognizing when something might feel a bit scary, but actually it would be a really great opportunity to explore. But yeah, for me, I don't ever try and impose my way of doing things on other people. I know we are all different. My starting point was, I think, as I said earlier, around that exploration of myself. And in doing that, I've also got to understand, you know, other people are not wired like I am. And that's why my clients are the opposite of me, usually, because they've got all of the ideas and the passion and the vision that, you know, I'm not an ideas popping every 5 minutes kind of person, and that's what they need to balance them out. So I meet them where they're at with what's going on for them. But it's always about what's working for you, not here's a 5-step plan to achieve X, Y, or Z. It's like, okay, what's going to feel good to you? What's worked for you before and what hasn't worked for you before? All of those kind of things. And I see everything as one big experiment. So getting curious, experimenting, noticing how things feel and being able to tweak and adjust, which is also why in everything that I do, it's a longer term thing. It's not a bish, bash, bosh and you're done, because I don't want to say, go do it like this. They go off, it doesn't work, and then they feel really crappy about themselves when actually there's nothing wrong with them. We've just learnt something. That way doesn't work for you. Let's try something else. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think maybe that experimental approach has helped you manage out risk-averse Louise?
Ask me that again.
Do you think that your experimental approach to things has helped you kind of manage out the risk averse you who might
Yeah.
not want to experiment as much?
Yeah, I think it probably has. And it's an interesting one, actually. Yeah, I think absolutely. Because whenever I've done something, it's been, let's just try it and see what happens, rather than let's try this. And if it fails, then I am a failure and I'm going to have to go and get a full-time job and just give this whole thing up. I've never thought that. I've always had faith in what I'm doing. And it's interesting, actually, because that, now I'm thinking about it, this might be going a bit deep now, but it feels a bit of a paradox, because on the one hand, I'm not the sort of person that has loads of ideas pinging at me all the time. So you could assume that when I do get an idea that I attach to and want to experiment with, that I would be putting more weight on that, because I'm like, well, if this one doesn't work, I haven't got anything else. But actually, that hasn't really been the case. And I think maybe it's more because in my experience, it's not necessarily that the idea was bad. It's that maybe the way I was doing it, or the way I was trying to sell it, or something about the way it was being delivered needed to be shifted and adjusted, rather than the thing in its entirety was wrong. But yeah, having a curious experimental mindset has definitely allowed me to take risks that if I had an all or nothing kind of approach and a success or succeed or fail kind of mindset, I probably wouldn't have been able to, take those actions.
I think the kernel of that definitely sounds like multi-dimensional thinking. Like, yeah, the idea didn't work this time. Was it the approach? Was it the timing? Was it the audience? Was it the container it was in? It's not just, oh, it didn't work, chuck it off the table.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's always something else you can do.
Yeah, and it's such a terrible waste when people try something, they put a load of time and work into something, they try it once and then they decide it's rubbish and they don't ever do anything with it again, even if it's just repurposing what you've created already and turning it into something different. There's always value, always.
Absolutely, because it's yours.
Yeah.
Because it's come from you, and the thing you create is intrinsically valuable.
Yeah.
Let's talk about fun, because you mentioned fun. I talk about fun a lot also. I am of the mindset that if something is not fun, it is not worth doing, because we live very short lives, contextually speaking, and especially because we spend so much time as self-employed bods doing the biz, it should be fun. So, how do you bring fun and joy and jollity and lightness into what you do?
It is in these sorts of conversations that you and I are having right now. I am a massive introvert, and for years I felt quite lonely in my business, and I loved my clients and they brought the fun, but I was essentially sitting at home on my own and it was lonely. But over the last few years, I have taken steps to address that so that I am introducing more fun. And it has come from just having conversations like this, getting out. When I say getting out in the world, not necessarily leaving the house. Some of the getting out in the world has been on the old internet, and meeting people and just having conversations and not taking myself too seriously. I'm very active on LinkedIn now, and I think, my feed is full of people who are having fun. People talk about LinkedIn as being quite dry sometimes. Not in my feed, it isn't, because I'm surrounding myself with people who are having a bit of a laugh. And I feel like there's a sense of community there as well, which I never expected. But for me, it's coming also from knowing myself well enough, and everything, like my podcast, for example, the way that I have set that up and created that is so that it feels fun and in flow for me, not hard and sticky and heavy and horrible. So the episodes are short on purpose. They're solo episodes on purpose, because that is going to feel more fun for me. And it's having that awareness constantly of, is this going to feel like fun or is it going to be really hard? And the other thing, I loved what you said earlier about if it's not going to be fun, it's not worth doing. Unfortunately, we all have things to do that are not fun and that we have to do. Admin, all that, the tax return, all these things like that. And I try and make those things fun by whacking on some music, and quite often I've got some playlists on Spotify. A couple of them are called LinkedIn Loving playlists, and it's a certain amount of time, and I will stand at my standing desk, whack them on full blast, hang out on LinkedIn, go and connect with people and have a chat with people, and I just do it till the music stops, and then I go do something else. And it's trying to find those little ways, and I talk to my clients about this all the time. It's like, how can you shift your energy to make it feel like fun? If you know it needs to be done in a certain way, it's not really in flow for you, you can't delegate it, you've got to do it. Instead of spending a whole day procrastinating and dragging it out so it actually ends up taking 5 times as long as it needs to, how can you make it fun? Where can you go? What can you surround yourself with? There's ways and means. But it's made a massive difference. That whole networking thing and getting out and meeting people over the last couple of years has made a huge difference to how I'm feeling and the fun I'm having.
I love that.
Oh, and one other thing, collaboration as well. I'm collaborating with somebody at the moment, and that has been the biggest amount of fun. We are constantly laughing with each other, creating this thing together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I highly recommend that as well. If you're that way inclined, find someone to go create something with. It's loads of fun. Yeah.
I definitely agree on that. It's, yes, we are doing things for ourselves, but we don't need to do it by ourselves.
Yeah.
Doesn't lessen the impact of your contribution, just means you get twice as much out of it.
And I think, I don't know whether whether you would agree with this. I think the more you show up as yourself as well, the more you will attract people to you who you want to actually spend time with. So all of my clients are people that I want to hang out with and would be happy to hang out with, whether that's the members I've got in Make It Happen Club or my private clients. I don't want to work with people I don't want to spend time with. Thank you very much. And I think if you're hiding away and not showing people who you are, it's far more difficult to attract those like-minded people to you, and it's more difficult to tell whether or not you're going to jive with somebody, I think. So, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. A nice use of jive also. I appreciate that. Controversially, maybe, I would say that if you are being 100% of you, or as much of you as you are comfortable being, you don't need to try and attract people because it just happens.
Yeah.
It's almost like anti-marketing. And I know a lot of fantastic brand people, marketers, content folk, and they all kind of say the same thing, is that you just show up as you, do it in your way, and the right people will come. As you say, if it starts with you, the human being, the little ripples suddenly turn into giant waves, and you haven't actually had to do anything about it. It just happens. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I think we are in a place where we can be the least alone we've ever needed to feel, because everyone else is there too.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a time of potential. One question that I like to ask everybody who I talk to, and you've alluded to a lot of these things already, but maybe there's something in summary. It's like, what is the one big myth about self-employment that you have smashed into tiny little pieces since you started on this road?
It's the thing that pops into mind is the idea that there is a formula for success. And I almost didn't use that as my answer, because in my world, I am so beyond believing that to be true that it kind of doesn't feel like a myth anymore. It just feels like some nonsense that people deploy in an attempt to sell a thing. But for anyone who's listening to this who maybe hasn't been in this world for as long, anyone who is trying to sell you this is how I did it, just do what I did and you'll have exactly the same level of success, beware. Because you are not them, they are not you. You bring your own personality, tendencies, preferences, and all the rest of it to everything that you're doing. So following somebody else's blueprint very rarely works. And sure, you can be guided by other people and how they do things, but just always looking at it through the filter of what you know about yourself. Trust yourself, trust your instincts, rather than feeling like you're failing in some way if somebody else's, idiot proof 5-step formula doesn't work for you, because those things never do.
Mm-hmm. The high horse is whinnying in agreement.
I'm up there with you,
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is no one size fits all approach to winning this game.
Yeah. Yeah, you just said that a lot more succinctly than I did. Yes.
Louise, if people would like to get hold of you, if they would like to talk to you more about the stuff we've talked about today, if they want to work with you, which I would strongly encourage that they do, where can they find you? How can they get in touch?
Okay, so I hang out mostly on LinkedIn, and Tom will kindly put the link to that in the show notes. Thank you very much, Tom. And yeah, go check out my podcast, Unfrazzle, which is really bite-sized kind of insights that will help you if you're feeling overwhelmed. It just helps you to get a bit of perspective and a bit of focus back into your day. And if you're kind of fed up of chasing all of the productivity hacks and all the tips and tools and tricks that promise to get you more productive, those things are not working, and you're fed up of wasting your time on those things, I have a resource that is free that you can go and grab that will help you with the kind of self-discovery side of things, help you figure out what works for you, so that you can cut out the noise of everything else and hone in on what is going to work for you. So if you go to bettylouonline.com/holygrail, that will take you to that resource. It's called the Holy Grail of Productivity. And yeah, I hope you find it helpful.
Amazing. Well, Louise, thank you so much for sharing your experience, your insight, bringing some fun. And I hope that everyone who has listened has found it as fun as I have.
Thanks, Tom. I've had loads of fun as well. It's a pleasure. Thank you.